Hi, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where I'm going to mute the other computer that I'm monitoring the stream on. Wow, yesterday was a big deal. Our 900th show, so today is our 901st, and it's guaranteed to be anticlimactic compared to what we did yesterday. But that's fine because we're getting back to what we do. And that's not celebrating the fact that we're doing so many of these episodes. It's that we are watching so many films. And we have watched quite a few films. Was our, according to my notes, our 4,253rd film. That number is, we're just kind of making that number up a little bit because not everything got logged correctly. Some things got shown twice, etc., etc. But what we do is we collect old 16 millimeter films we have in our collection. We have over 36,000. So that means we have roughly 32,000 films that we need to watch before my eyeballs fall out. Or before the earth crashes into the sun. Here is one such film. We have seen this before, but this is a little bit different. This is Our Family Works Together. Enjoy.
Seriez-vous surpris de voir une voiture de police s'arrêter devant chez vous un beau matin et de voir un agent venir vers votre maison? Eh bien, cet agent, c'est moi. Et Paul et Suzanne sont toujours contents de me voir parce que je suis leur père. Et, voyez-vous, toute ma famille habite cette maison. Moi aussi, je suis content d'être rentré. J'ai travaillé toute la nuit, allant partout dans la ville pour voir si tout se passait bien. Maman aussi est contente de me voir. Ah, c'est si bon d'être chez soi. Dans la cuisine, maman s'occupe du petit déjeuner pour toute la famille. Paul sait qu'avec mon petit déjeuner, j'aime avoir mon journal. Mais il y a quelque chose que je veux faire tout de suite. Dire bonjour à bébé. Il ne peut pas parler, mais je sais bien que lui aussi est content de me voir. C'est que j'aime beaucoup ce petit garçon. Nous nous aimons bien tous les deux. Et un jour, il saura que si je travaille beaucoup, c'est pour gagner la vie de toute notre famille. Au petit déjeuner, nous sommes tous ensemble et nous mangeons toutes les bonnes choses que maman a faites. Ensuite, les enfants iront en classe. Maman a du travail à la maison et aussi elle sort acheter tout ce qu'il nous faut. Mais comme je dors le jour, notre famille mène une vie pas tout à fait comme celle des autres. Suzanne n'amène pas ses petites amies à la maison quand je dors. Et Paul sait que lui non plus ne doit pas amener les siens. Et comme ça, tout le monde m'aide dans mon travail. L'argent que je gagne, je le donne à maman pour qu'elle achète tout ce qu'il faut pour toute la famille. Maman fait très attention quand elle achète quelque chose, que ce soit des vêtements, des livres, des jouets ou ce qu'il faut pour manger. Ce qu'il en faut des choses pour Paul, Suzanne et bébé. Quand je suis couché, maman tire les rideaux pour que la fenêtre ne laisse pas passer de jour et que je dorme bien. Et maintenant, dans sa chambre, tous les matins, Paul fait son lit. Suzanne range dans son placard les vêtements qu'elle ne met pas, sans que jamais maman le lui dise. Avant l'école, Suzanne donne à manger à son oiseau. Et Paul fait du bon travail. Paul et Suzanne aident beaucoup maman dans son travail. Maintenant, les enfants sont prêts à aller à l'école. Eux feront leur travail de classe pendant la journée. Dans notre famille, nous travaillons tous, sauf bébé, bien entendu. Mais lui, il rend tout le monde heureux. Ce matin, alors que je dormais, ma famille a décidé de me faire une surprise. Ce sera très amusant. Ils vont y travailler tous ensemble. Il faudra que maman sorte et achète des choses spéciales. Paul, lui, achètera de la glace en rentrant de l'école et Suzanne ira chez son amie Jacqueline. Là, le grand-père de Jacqueline lui donnera quelque chose. Quelle surprise ils allaient me faire! Paul et Suzanne ne pouvaient pas attendre que l'heure de la classe soit passée. Maintenant, maman a du travail à faire. C'est que maman reprise nos vêtements, les lave et les repasse. Comme elle y passe beaucoup de temps, les vêtements que nous portons sont toujours propres et bien tenus. Maman prépare tous les repas pour la famille. Et comme nous avons toujours faim, ça lui donne beaucoup de travail. Regardez ces beaux gâteaux. Il faut aussi s'occuper de bébé. Ah, que de choses à faire pour maman. Mais c'est parce qu'elle fait toutes ces choses que notre maison est agréable, propre et confortable. Mais pour son travail, maman doit aussi sortir. Et alors, elle prend bébé avec elle. Elle s'arrête dans plusieurs magasins. Maman cherche une robe pour Suzanne. Elle a bien vu la robe que Suzanne aurait voulu, mais elle coûte trop cher. Elle sait que ça coûtera moins cher si elle fait la robe elle-même. Aussi, elle est entrée dans un autre magasin où elle a acheté tout ce qu'il faut pour que Suzanne puisse avoir la robe qu'elle a choisie, bien que cela va encore s'ajouter au travail que fait maman. Puis, à l'épicerie, maman a acheté les fruits et les légumes et tout ce qu'il faut pour les repas de la famille, sans oublier ce qu'il fallait pour ma surprise. Après l'école, Suzanne et son amie Jacqueline sont rentrées ensemble. Suzanne n'avait pas oublié que le grand-père de Jacqueline devait lui donner quelque chose pour ma surprise. Le grand-père de Jacqueline faisait du feu dans cette grande cheminée parce qu'ils allaient dîner dehors. Comme maman l'avait vu entre-temps, ce que voulait Suzanne était prêt. Jacqueline veut montrer à Suzanne la nouvelle petite maison faite par son grand-père pour son lapin. Son grand-père fait beaucoup de choses. C'est lui aussi qui a fait cette table. Quand sa mère rentrera de son travail, Jacqueline dînera dehors avec elle et son grand-père. Le père de Jacqueline, qui est malade, n'est pas à la maison avec sa famille et c'est maman qui travaille pour gagner de l'argent. Jacqueline, en bonne petite fille, aide beaucoup sa maman à la maison. Son grand-père veut montrer à Jacqueline une lettre qui vient d'arriver et qui est de son père. Il ira bientôt tout à fait bien et bientôt il rentrera à la maison. Le grand-père de Jacqueline donne ses bonnes nouvelles à Suzanne qui en est presque aussi heureuse que son amie. Mais voilà la maman de Jacqueline qui arrive de son travail avec tout ce qu'il faut pour dîner et elle demande à Suzanne de rester avec eux. Mais grand-père sait bien qu'elle ne peut pas rester. Suzanne lui parle de la surprise que toute la famille me prépare. Maintenant, le grand-père de Jacqueline est allé prendre ce que Suzanne était venue chercher. C'était un seau, mais un seau spécial, pour faire une surprise spéciale. Maintenant, il était temps que Suzanne s'en aille. Elle aurait bien aimé rester, mais il fallait qu'elle aide les autres pour préparer la surprise. Quand Suzanne est arrivée à la maison, Paul était déjà là avec la glace. Mais à moi, est-ce qu'on m'avait déjà parlé de la surprise? Non. Bien que j'étais maintenant levé, j'étais tellement occupé à donner un bain à bébé que je ne faisais pas attention à ce qui se passait à la cuisine. Maman avait fait quelque chose avec des œufs, du sucre, de la crème et de la vanille et versé le tout dans un récipient logé dans le seau rapporté par Suzanne. Quelle surprise on allait me faire! Paul met de la glace et Suzanne du sel. Avez-vous deviné ce que serait ma surprise? Eh bien, je vais vous le dire. Paul et Suzanne me faisaient une crème glacée pour dessert. C'est beaucoup de travail, mais c'est amusant de travailler tous ensemble. Les enfants se donnaient beaucoup de mal, mais maman aussi apportait son aide. Que de travail pour faire une crème glacée! Et comme j'arrive avec bébé, ils se mettent à crier « Surprise! Surprise !» Et c'en était bien une, parce que j'aime beaucoup la crème glacée. Aussi, j'ai voulu faire ma part de travail. Quand toute la famille travaille en même temps, c'est très amusant. Qu'elle travaille pour faire une crème glacée, ou qu'elle travaille pour faire un pique-nique, comme le fait la famille de Jacqueline. Enfin, mon énorme crème glacée surprise est prête. C'est la première fois que Paul voit faire de la crème glacée à la maison, et Suzanne ne peut plus attendre pour la manger. Comme elle va être bonne! Avant de mettre bébé au lit, on lui en a donné un peu. Pour commencer, il ne savait pas très bien s'il aimait ça. Mais après, il savait bien que c'était bon. Enfin, maman a donné à tout le monde de la bonne crème glacée que tout le monde avait faite. Voyez-vous, c'est si amusant de travailler tous ensemble.
A lot quicker than I thought. Yeah, well, there you go. So that film could have two uses. One is it could have been used in French language class in elementary or high school. Two, Cornette was branching out and distributing films to other countries. So this could have been in Canada, this could have been in France, this could have been in other French speaking countries. And we've run across a couple. So I think we showed one that we found that was Arabic. It was a film about physical education, and it was pretty great. I love running across those because I think it had, I don't know if it had Arabic subtitles. I can't remember what it was. We watch a lot of films over here. All right, speaking of which, behind me I have a film scanner, and we are going to watch Age of Ballyhoo. Enjoy.
Crowds began gathering in mid-afternoon. By evening, 10,000 people jammed the intersection at 7th Avenue and 50th Street in New York. 3,000 were already inside, admiring crystal chandeliers, 5-story columns of green marble, and the largest oval rug in the world. My name is Gloria Swanson. I was there, too. It was the opening of the Roxy, the cathedral of the motion picture. Charlie Chaplin came, and even Texas Guinan was there. Impresario Roxy announced himself quite satisfied. "Take a look at this stupendous theater," he said. "I'd rather be Roxy than John D. Rockefeller or Henry Ford." In these good old days, movie palaces were our public temples, and I'll wager citizens young and old went to them at least 2 or 3 times a week. The motion picture, which opened the Roxy, was mine, The Loves of Sonia. I had produced it myself, and I was all of 27 years old. You know, we never thought of these movies as time capsules, but in a way they were. No matter what the stories, the films seemed to document the years. The 20s were an age of Ballyhoo, the jazz age. Was all that, but it was more. This is a look at the 20s through authentic documents, songs, words, and films, and not just motion pictures, but newsreels, too. For the camera's eye seemed everywhere. Oh, it was a great time to be alive. November 1918. The war was over. After a year in France, the troops were coming home. President Wilson called it a great crusade to make the world safe for democracy. For these men, the war was something else. Trenches, boredom, very little glory. 100,000 doughboys died. But all that seemed forgotten now, as wives and sweethearts, mothers and sons waited to welcome the boys back. They expected to find their world much as they had left it. Parades and celebrations in small towns and villages. Church socials, picnics, and county fairs. The first luxury was, guess what, an automobile. You could buy a brand new Model T for less than $300. It would go 45 miles an hour, and as Henry Ford said, it was available in any color so long as it was black. 15 million families bought them by 1927. One farm lady was asked why her family bought a car when they had no bathtub. Well, she explained, you can't go to town in a bathtub. People gave up walking, and cars replaced horses as the principal mode of transportation. Sunday afternoon drives became a family ritual. Of course, diehards maintained the horse could never be replaced, but some drivers were ready to accept any challenge. As primitive as these cars seem today, people literally fell in love with them. They called them flivvers and tin lizzies. They made jokes about them, wrote songs about them, thought they could go anywhere. Cars provided a new mobility, but motorists were often frustrated, for the paved road usually ended just beyond the city limits. Travelers crossing Iowa in early spring sometimes had to wait for days. So we paved the old roads and built new highways, more than 300,000 miles of them in the 20s. By 1928, a motorist could drive all the way from New York to Kansas on paved roads. Further west, Car travel was still a great adventure in the rainy season. Wires followed the roads, bringing electric lights, radios, electric irons, and vacuum cleaners into homes and villages and distant farms. More and more, the telephone tube tied the country together. You could call Aunt Clara at Christmas, find out what time it was, if it was raining in Chicago, and what your neighbors were doing, simply by picking up the telephone. In the 20s, we spent more money on roads and buildings than on anything else. The filling station became an American institution. And when we all drove downtown, we invented the parking problem. The city changed the country, so did the machine. Mechanization and efficient management revolutionized American industry. Without increasing the labor force, factories doubled production in the 20s. Workers made more money for shorter hours. Profits mounted. Business was booming. Machinery was the new messiah, Henry Ford proclaimed. Lots of people agreed. With new technology came standardization. Breakfast came in boxes. For the first time, many consumers became conscious of brand names. Post Toasties went from cornstalk to table, untouched by human hands. From Maine to Mexico, Americans brushed their teeth with Sozodone, killed germs with Listerine, drank Moxie, bought their groceries at the A&P, but not me. To most people, technology meant the moving assembly line, which Henry Ford introduced in 1914. It took the Ford Motor Company 7 years to make 1 million cars. By 1924, they could do it in 132 days. A year later, a Model T rolled off the assembly line every 10 seconds. Detroit became a modern Mecca. Businessmen came from around the world to study its techniques. Good luck, Mr. Ford, quipped humorous Will Rogers. We won't know for years if you hurt us or you helped us, but you certainly didn't leave us as you found us. Ford himself said, I will build a motor car for the great multitude, so low in price that every man will be able to own one and enjoy with his family hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces. The car made the country accessible. It was a way for average citizens to return to the woods, visit national parks, and rediscover the joy of Sunday picnics. We grew up founding our dreams on infinite promises of American advertising, said Zelda Fitzgerald. And people agreed with Emile Coué. Every day and every way, things were getting better and better. We invested not just in necessities, but in the promises of comfort, convenience, and efficiency. The California gold rush dwindled by contrast to the Florida land boom of 1925. Finding the fountain of youth could not have made John D. Rockefeller more enthusiastic. Day after day for months, William Jennings Bryan preached the gospel of sunshine and salt water. Miami was the wonder city, the only place, said Bryan, where the lie you tell at breakfast can come true by evening. Within a year, 20 million building lots were staked out and sold. Buying and selling land was the principal industry organized on mass production lines. But many who flocked to Florida discovered they had purchased inaccessible swamps. Then in September 1926, the hurricanes came, leaving 50,000 homeless. Promoters insisted the damage could be repaired, but the tropical wind had burst the bubble in the sun. Rum running was another boom business in the 20s. Bootleggers religiously observed the law of supply and demand, but broke some of the others. Essayist E.B. White suggested that the government nationalize speakeasies, assuring citizens liquor of uniformly high quality. That way, he said, the enormous cost of dry enforcement could be met by profits from the sale of drinks. Federal agents would occasionally raid a still or seize a spectacular cargo of scotch, but 2,000 Treasury men were no match for 18,000 miles of coastline and the underworld. The noble experiment failed and was repealed in 1933. Prohibition spawned its own celebrities: Waxy Gordon, Legs Diamond, and Scarface Al Capone. Organized crime was synonymous with big cities. Fearful, the country organized its own groups to uphold the Constitution, the Bible, and the flag. The Ku Klux Klan, with 5 million members, proclaimed itself guardian of native values, defending white against black, Gentile against Jew, Protestant against Catholic. On August 8, 1925, 40,000 Klansmen carrying Bibles marched down Pennsylvania Avenue, singing the national anthem. Off-screen, Rudolph Valentino was charming and modest. In his films, he was a sheik bringing Latin love to millions of American women. They dreamed of being carried across the desert in his arms, struggling virtuously, but not too violently. When, at the age of 31, Rudy died suddenly, 30,000 people, among them Pola Negra, came to pay their last respects to the symbol of a perfect lover. It was the golden age of sports. The Flying Finn, Pavel Nurmi, became a public hero. Soon it seemed everyone was running and riding. The paved streets of cities seemed an invitation to 100 kids on bikes. "30,000 bowling alleys were built in the 1920s, and women, too, found time to play. Tilden, Johnson, Helen Wills drew crowds to courts at Forest Hills. Bobby Jones inspired 2 million Americans to buy woods and irons. Keep your eye on the ball. And in the 20s, everybody did. It became an age of watching sports as well as taking part in them. People paid $4.5 million to watch Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney in 1926 and 27. Red Grange joined the Chicago Bears. The Myers nominated him for Congress. Newt Rockne and the Four Horsemen made college football big business. Yale University sold $1 million worth of football tickets one season alone. On Saturday afternoon, thousands packed the stadiums to watch the Cowboys meet the Indians or the Giants battle the Bears, as Graham McNamee gave play-by-play descriptions to millions at home by their radios. In 1923, New Yorkers built Yankee Stadium as a monument to baseball. On opening day, 74,000 people packed the place to cheer the Babe. Few sports figures of any era achieved the fame and fortune of George Herman Ruth. Fans bought Eskimo pies, tons of Cracker Jack, and hot dogs. Al Smith threw out the first ball. In their adulation, enthusiastic sport writers could not overpraise Babe Ruth. During the 1927 season alone, he hit more than 60 home runs, setting a record to be unbroken for a generation. Babe Ruth and the New York Yankees were real heroes to us then. But the hero of heroes was Charles Lindbergh, who, with the spirit of St. Louis, formed the team he called We. At Curtis Field on Long Island, the 25-year-old Lindbergh, Commander Richard E. Byrd, and veteran pilot Clarence Chamberlain were among aviators from all over the world competing for a $25,000 prize offered to the first who would fly the Atlantic non-stop. Anxious after a week of rain, Lindbergh made his move. Early in the morning, he had his plane towed to Roosevelt Field. The weather was breaking over the ocean, and just after dawn, on the 20th of May, 1927, Charles A. Lindbergh, carrying a few sandwiches and some letters of introduction, climbed into his plane and took off for France. The New York Herald Tribune reported that Lindbergh seemed to lift the overloaded plane into the sky by his indomitable will alone. In 33 hours and 30 minutes, he flew into legend.
In the cold gray dawn, when the stars were gone, in a mighty aeroplane flew a boy in search of fame, far across the bounding main. Like a bird on high, out to do or die on his journey over there. Many million hearts beat for him, and the whole world said a prayer. For Lindbergh, oh what a flying fool was he. Lindbergh, his name will live in history. Over the ocean he flew all alone, gambling with fate and with dangers unknown. Others may take that trip across the sea upon some future day, but take your hats off to Lucky, Lucky Lindbergh, the eagle of the USA. Others may make the trip across the sea upon some future day, but take your hats off to Lucky, Lucky Lindbergh, the eagle of the USA.
When asked if he intended to fly back to New York, Lindbergh said, "I don't think I shall try that." So President Coolidge sent the cruiser Memphis and brought the hero home. We thought he was more important than the end of World War I. The New York Times devoted more space to his return than it did to the armistice. Technology had transformed our lives, and we wondered if machinery really was the new Messiah, as Henry Ford had told us. Lindbergh seemed proof that machines could ennoble rather than confine. "You fellows have not said enough about that wonderful motor," he told reporters. "He never let us forget that man and machine, that we had made the flight together." In an age of so little poetry and so much uncertainty, Lindbergh seemed a modern Galahad, and we shouted ourselves hoarse in celebration, not because he had flown the Atlantic, not even because he was an American, but because of his bravery, his dignity, and his modesty. Lindbergh reminded us of all we thought best in ourselves, an uncommon man in an age of Ballyhoo.
All alone in the race with death, through the cold and sleet you carried on, without a buddy or word of cheer, you braved the danger alone. Great as the ride of Paul Revere, your name goes down in history, Lindbergh, a hero to do and dare, dauntless, fearless, victorious. And while you were flying high in the sky, you flew into the heart of the world. While we were praying, we knew you'd come through. Now the flag of your victory's unfurled. The spirit of youth carried you on, and a mother's prayer did its part. With God on his throne, leading you across the foam, like an angel you flew into
This photograph holds a precious place among my memories because this great American gentleman has never lowered his standards. Something for youngsters to look up to. That decade did change us, but American leaders left our mark all over the world. It can still be seen by those who look around and understand the years when we were young and the world held promise of 10,000 bright tomorrows.
Oh, give me something to remember you by when you are far away from me, dear. So give me something to remember you by when you are far away from me.
Wow. Lots of archival footage there. And I don't know if you noticed, the director was David Shepard, who was the guy who ran Black Hawk Films. And we've shown many Black Hawk films in the past. And I actually met him once. Very kind, elderly gentleman when I talked to him, but he was an early film collector. So a lot of this material either came from his collection or National Archives or Library of Congress or other places. And that was Gloria Swanson narrating. So interesting stuff there, definitely. Now, we're looking from the past, and now we're going to look to the future, kinda from the past. This is part of a series that we digitized from the Cornet collection, but it's not a Cornet film. But it features our pal Arthur C. Clarke sitting with a speaking spell. I love it. All right, here we go. This is 2,000 Years in One Generation. Enjoy.
Why do we love cities? There's a fascinating mixture of the old and the new, what we know and what we don't. Much as we love the familiar, however, it's the new information that makes the city so important, as producer David Kennard describes.
Here to San Antonio, like to any great city, people come to find out what's new. What's the latest thing in architecture? What's the latest place to have a drink? What's the latest movie? Cities are places where people come to get new information. And of course there are good libraries here and good colleges. You can get good business advice, and I'm sure you can get some good political hints too. You see, cities are like kind of giant information exchanges. They're more than just cultural or social or economic centers. They're communication centers. That's why cities exist, and that's why cities have always existed.
This is the ancient city of Anuradhapura on the island of Sri Lanka. This was once the capital of the Kingdom of Serendip. 2,500 years ago, this was the latest thing in architecture, one of the wonders of the world. Merchants, scholars, holy men, and princes came from as far away as China and Arabia. They brought more than business to this city. They brought new ideas. Libraries were set up at the temples. The culture grew and flourished. Today, much of Anuradhapura is a ruin. We can only get a vague idea of the complex and bustling city it once was. But the ideas live on through sculpture, music, religion, law, science. In the cities, human beings found ways to store their information so that future generations could use it. It's the desire to communicate, even across time, that makes human beings unique. Arthur Clarke explains it this way.
Yes, I mean, man is primarily the communicating animal. And this is the most important distinction between man and the other animals. They can all communicate to some extent, but we are the only one who sort of really take a real lifestyle of communications. And because the technology of communication is what has enabled us to do this on such a scale and over such distances. So communication is the central, the cutting edge of civilization.
In Sri Lanka, where Clarke now lives, is a culture that existed 2,000 years before America was discovered. But to this day, many of the people still can't read or write. Religion helps provide them with an education. They travel long distances to learn from Buddhist monks who live far away from the villages in simple caves. Across the ages, religion itself has been a major expression of our human need to communicate. Every society has developed rituals like these, symbols of a human desire to transmit hopes and wishes to a divine being. In helping to serve our needs, priests developed and promoted the use of spoken and written language. Holy books and ceremonies help to maintain traditions and pass on knowledge to new generations. For centuries, people here have been satisfied with communication on a local scale, face-to-face, village-to-village. But now, suddenly, new technology has arrived. What should be done with it?
Civilization is impossible without technology. Unfortunately, one can have technology without civilization. And the most important of all technologies is that of communication, beginning, of course, with speech, which you might say is a kind of technology, writing, printing, the book, and now, in our age, electronic communications, of which you have a splendid example here in the Earth satellite station in the middle of Sri Lanka. Now, people often wonder what this kind of advanced technology in communications has to do with the developing world, with the people in the jungle villages. And I have no patience with those who say we should leave much of the world to a happy ignorance. Just one telephone could bring most of this planet out of the Stone Age within a generation. In the villages all over the third world, here in Sri Lanka, in Africa, South America, everywhere, people die in thousands because there's no telephone through which they can call the doctor.
In many villages in Sri Lanka, life has hardly changed in the last 2,000 years. In an emergency, all you can do is cry for help. All those who hear your cry will gather round. In this case, a man had been bitten by a snake. Everyone in earshot ran to the scene. Everyone except a doctor. There is no doctor in this village. This man's life depends on what treatment he gets right now. Does he know what kind of snake bit him? Do they know the right herbal antidote? They'd better, because there are no other medicines available and no telephone in the village to call in the paramedics or get expert advice. Expanding the flow of information can transform communities like this. For example, in this village, they still believe in the magical powers of holy men. Someone has lost a cow, and this man's job will be to find it by having a vision. So he dances himself into a trance. All is now ready, the village chief tells the onlookers. The visionary is in a trance. The man who lost the cow has given him a leaf from the field where the cow normally grazed. All they can do is wait till the spirits speak through the visionary. The cow is not lost, he says. It wandered off to a different water hole down the road. It may seem like hocus pocus to us, but the villagers are well pleased with the results. But aren't there better ways of finding lost cows in the late 20th century?
Much of the world suffers from information starvation as badly as it does from the other, more familiar kind of starvation. You see the sort of blank eyes of the people who really have very few sources of information. The sources they have are polluted by superstition. So I get very angry with people who say we should not bring information to these simple, unspoilt creatures of nature, and this is just nonsense.
There is one link between the village and the outside world, for the few who can write. 2 miles away is a post office. This is it. And that's the postman, leaving with a letter for the capital city, Colombo. It may take weeks to get a response, but eventually vital information will arrive. In this case, a government representative who could read and write came to the village to explain what should be done about planting seeds in the drought and to gather information on the local conditions. The villagers are getting solid information, presented face to face in a way they can understand. In turn, they are able to present their point of view. It's not unlike a town meeting in Vermont. There's plenty of room for debate and discussion. However, this kind of democratic procedure demands a well-informed public. That's why education is the most crucial priority, once people have enough to eat. It's the children from these villages who are really in touch with the 20th century, however. Every day they walk up to 5 miles to school, out of one world into another. They face an incredible challenge of stepping forward 2,000 years in one generation, from a pre-literate era to the computer age. Their parents can't read or write and turn to holy men to solve their problems. They have to work out the value of pi to 3 decimal places, learn the history of Asia, and write papers on health sciences. Their teachers are opening the door on a world of information undreamed of by their parents. It's hard for us to realize what a huge leap forward they're making in one generation. They speak and write not only their native Sinhalese, but Tamil and English as well.
My house is big.
But this is only the start. Sooner or later, the microchip will be coming to their classroom. Speak and spell machines, perhaps.
This is really the prototype of the whole new class of devices, the sort of educational equivalent, in a way, of the calculators. I'd call them pocket educators, because they could teach you all the basic skills of literacy, and then they could contain whole libraries as well. They could read books back to you. You could have encyclopedias, dictionaries. Anything could be incorporated in this sort of device with a screen that should give a visual display. And these things could be made quite cheaply and sturdily, and if they were sun-powered, you wouldn't have to worry about batteries. And this could trigger an educational revolution in the whole world because they could be made so cheaply, mass-produced. You could almost give them away. The software would be the expensive side.
But I remember when I was a child, or I remember now, the teachers I had who took care of me, the human beings who recommended that I should try harder and so on. And do you think people today will remember with great compassion and nostalgia a piece of plastic that used to speak to them?
There's no question of that. I mean, the best educational system is a log with a teacher at one end and a student at the other. But we'll never have enough teachers and enough logs. And another remark that somebody made, which I've quoted quite often, is that any teacher who can be replaced by a machine should be. So the two complement each other. The machines can remove the drudgery from education, and also the other important point is the machine enables you to go at the rate you want to go. The machine can personalize education. The teacher's job should be to provide inspiration. The machine should deal with the routine of education.
Sri Lankan children may not have computers yet, but they're fortunate to have dedicated teachers. This means that the cultural gap between parents and children gets wider and wider. The government believes it has found one way to inform and educate the parents, however. The people in this room are selecting the information that will be sent out to millions of their fellow citizens. They work for Sri Lanka's first television network, set up in 1980. Every night they have to decide what goes in the news. Simple villagers will be asked to understand the implications of anti-nuclear demonstrations in England and the strength of the dollar on the Tokyo exchange. This editorial conference is like a town meeting held on behalf of the whole country. What stories to put in, what to leave out, whether to favor international items rather than stress internal politics and tensions.
So that anybody who makes a mistake at any point.
When the news comes on, it'll provide people with information they never chose to receive. It'll reveal a world they might prefer not to know about. They'll suddenly have to confront issues that yesterday they never knew existed. It's impossible for us to realize the impact of these everyday images on a villager who has never seen television before. It's important to understand the responsibility that television has to explain life honestly and clearly.
ප්‍රවාහන අමාත්‍යාංශයට අයත් ඉඩමක්.
All information is education in one way or another, and Arthur Clarke believes that nothing is more important.
I'm very fond of quoting H.G. Wells, who once said that the future will be a race between education and catastrophe. Well, the use of satellites for education, particularly in developing countries, is something which has been written a great deal about and is already starting in a small way and will be even more important in the future.
All societies are a mixture of the modern and the old-fashioned, nowhere more so than in a developing country like Sri Lanka. These children are literate. They are familiar with 3 languages. Science and math are problems they deal with every day. But they're growing up in a society with social and religious customs that haven't changed much in 2,000 years. These children know what the communications revolution is all about. They're living it. It's an exciting time, but for them, as for us, the challenge is the same. Will they be able to keep up with the pace of change, the pace of the revolution? Will we? Partial funding for this program was provided by GTE, a world leader in telecommunications, lighting, and precision materials.
Well, that was kind of fascinating. I have some others in that series that I think are really interesting. In 1985, that's before the internet, really. Certainly before smartphones. And, you know, the repercussions of information, too much information, information that has not been vetted, the signal to noise ratio, all that stuff is stuff that we are dealing with right now. And this is one of the reasons that I am sharing what I'm sharing, is because there is so much noise. I want to be able to offer something that is from another time that allows us to kind of use hindsight to say, like, wow, that's interesting. That's how this common social problem is being adjusted or being, society is dealing with it. Did we do a good job of dealing with it back then? Are we doing a good job of dealing with it now? Have we forgotten what we're doing? You know, who knows? Well, we know. Again, hindsight tells us a lot. But thanks for joining us today. I mean, the other part of this, of course, is it's fun to watch these films and laugh at them and the corniness and see things that you hadn't seen before. And I gave you Arthur C. Clarke holding a speak and spell. A little version of how. Yeah, that's what we do. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments. We would love a thumbs up. I would love a like, a subscribe. I would love for you to tell other people about what we're doing. You can also support us with a little bit of moolah, a little bit of cash, so we can buy forever stamps to mail out things, like stickers. Anyways, we'll be back again tomorrow. What is tomorrow? Friday? I don't even know what today is. Yesterday was a blur. So tomorrow's Friday? I believe that's right. Yeah, come on back, and we'll watch some stuff. If you wanted to donate some moolah to us, you can go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can go to patreon.com/avgeeks, or you can use the super thanks button in the YouTube chat. Regardless, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Everybody take care.